Okay, so today while I was out and about, I also found a ton of mullein pushing up, and I'm pretty excited about that. You know, kind of watching the plant allies and seeing what's waking up on the land and seeing what will be like heavy this year. Like heavy and like who's like showing up the most. I'm seeing a lot of like lung related allies, like a lot of, you know, the mullein, the violet. I think it's gonna be a very like last season we had tons of pearly everlasting, and that's a subalpine plant. You know, we live in high elevation, and I said I bet we're gonna have a real up in the head sinusy type sickness fall, and I called it, at least for here. And so last year there wasn't very much mullein. This year there's a ton. And there wasn't much violet last year, and then this year there's a lot. So I'm thinking in our area anyhow, we're gonna get hit with some like lung crud come this fall. So I was like, let's get to making some mullein tincture now, so we have it on hand when we need it. That's the most important thing with herbal plant medicine, is that you have it when you need it. Not you're like, oh, I'm so sick, I better order this now. Get out there and get the work done now, so you have it when you need it. So, you know, you've probably met mullein before. She's nice and fuzzy, and if you're looking on how to make a mullein tincture, I bet you, something in my nail, I bet you already have a bunch of mullein that you're trying to figure out how to use. I like to make an infusion with her dried leaf, but with her fresh leaf, I make a tincture because I only use I almost said dry, fresh plant matter to make tinctures. So we're going to make a mullein tincture today, and it's going to be super easy. But I'm going to take a bunch out here. This basket is full. See? Lots of mullein. And this is just from taking 1 or 2 leaves from each plant we came across. So we found a really great field far away from roads and all that stuff where she has just really latched on. So I'm going to get myself a good pile here. I promise this is not complicated. You don't have to be a genius, but also you are smart enough to do this, I promise. I'm going to wipe up this puddle before it gets me. I see it coming towards me. It's going to get me. It's, you know, been raining on and off here, so it's Eastern Oregon in the spring, Northeast Oregon in the spring, so you know. So, you are definitely smart enough to make a tincture. It's not complicated at all. Mullein tincture is really good for coughing and kind of just lung health in general. So all we're going to do is chop her up. Now in other ones you guys have seen me use like an ulu or a knife on a cutting board, but with mullein, just the sheer volume of her, it's easier just to chop her up. I don't want you to pulverize your plant allies. I don't want you to, you know, chop them down into oblivion, because we know what they are, they know what they are, and the alcohol knows what it's doing, and the plant knows what it's doing. So most of the time when people make, and you guys have probably heard this in other videos, most of the time when people like chop their plants up into like basically a paste, they are intending to dump really high grain alcohol over it, high proof alcohol. That way they only have to wait a few weeks for their tincture to be ready. But I'm telling you, you are not going to get a well-rounded tincture that way. And if you are going to hurt yourself with a safe, simple plant ally like mullein, that's going to be how you do it. Also, if you're using dried plant matter to make a tincture. Like in her state right now, she's whole, she has properties that are available to us while she's still fresh. And then also when you only use 100 proof vodka like we'll be doing here, with 100 proof vodka being 50% alcohol and 50% water, you do get some of the water-based properties when you're making a tincture too. And so you have this whole balanced plant medicine versus, like you could almost say that like when you make a tincture with dried plant matter, or with really crazy high proof alcohol, like grain alcohol, you could almost say that it's stronger, that it's more effective. But that just, I mean, it is, but it's strong in the way that it can hurt you. And so I find that when you make tinctures with only fresh plant matter and nothing stronger than 100 proof, there's a piece of pitch on my scissors, nothing stronger than than 100 proof vodka, then you get this nice, gentle, whole medicine that's not going to be as likely to harm anybody or yourself. And I find it, I don't even know how to put words to it. It just, to me, it's really important, and I will not make a tincture with dried plant matter. Roots maybe being the exception, but even then, I do my best to use fresh roots too. So you'll see me kind of like examining her before I cut her up, because Mullein, and all of her fuzzy gloriness, likes to hold on to things, you know, and this is from a forest, so trees like to drop things and things like that, so I just make sure that the only thing that's going into my tincture is Mullein. On that note, I don't like to mix my tinctures. I want just one plant at a time. You're less likely to have adverse reactions. Plus, if you do have a reaction, whether it's for a good reaction, like a healthful reaction, or a bad reaction, like an allergic reaction, or your body's just like, hey, I don't like that plant, you don't have to play the guessing game of which one it was, like which one made me feel good or which one made me feel bad, you know, because then it's like a dangerous process. Let's say you're allergic to something, but there's 5 plants in a tincture. Well, which one are you allergic to? You can't even avoid which one might have caused the reaction, you know, and you kind of got to start all over again. So, just safe, simple plants with just simple processes, and you're not as likely to hurt yourself. So, the reason we're cutting this up a bit is so she has more surface space. And I really like the fresh leaves that come up off of Mullein. It scared me. The dog tried to get in the room. I really like, made me jump good, the fresh leaf that comes up in the spring, because I feel like she's more potent. Not potent in like a strong, better for you way, but she's just more, dog out. Little dog just scratches. The big dog's like, I can open this door. I feel like she's more, I don't know, she's just like, she just woke up and she's just full, and she's not exerting her energy anywhere than creating these leaves. So like a lot of times if you get a plant when it's blooming, all of its energy is going into blooming. Right now, all of her energy is in these leaves. I also like it, at about this size, the young, the small rosette, looks like a little rose when it grows. I like about this size if I'm going to dry this and smoke it. That's my favorite. I just feel like they're definitely more calming when they're small like that. These guys are so wet, I could shaking water off of them from the rain, but that rainwater won't hurt us none. Not where we live anyhow. Well, not how far out we go anyhow. So, you know, you can see I've got quite a lot here. Well, I intend to fill up a half-gallon jar. But you could just get like a half-pint jar, or a pint jar, or a quart jar, whatever you want. And you could take, you could make a small amount and just use 3 little Mullein leaves to make yourself a Mullein tincture. You could get a half-gallon or a gallon of vodka, and realistically, if you're just making these tinctures for yourself, you don't have to be making huge amounts. These tinctures will last you a long time, because remember, you're taking tinctures by the drop. So you're not having to take shots of this. And so if you start, you get yourself, a gallon of vodka, and you get yourself, I don't have any of the tiny jars, but you get yourself the tiny little like jelly jars, and you could start making all these tinctures and have a huge assortment of medicine to get you through when you need it, on hand when you need it, not when you're like, oh, I wish I had that. And you could do that so easily with just a gallon of vodka and a bunch of tiny little jars, and and before you know it, you have this whole arsenal of plant allies to help you when you get ill, or to prevent you from getting ill. So it is not as hard or complicated or as expensive as people would have you believe it is. Shoot, I buy organic vodka and it still isn't that expensive. Well, to be fair, it's because I buy it in bulk. But you can do that in most places. You can get a hold of a company. You can say, hey, I'd like to buy a case of your vodka. How much would that be? And I don't mean get a hold of the liquor store, I mean get a hold of the producer and say, okay, well, I would like you to ship it to this liquor store because they have a liquor license, and then you go and pick it up. And usually you don't really pay more than $5 or $10 for the delivery fee to the liquor store. They're not taking their cut because you're not buying it by the bottle. I do the same thing with my oils for making like oil infusions and stuff. There are cheaper ways to do things. So I think I've probably got enough here, but let's check it out. So I've got my mullein chopped up, but not, you know, murdered. You can still tell what she is. We're just creating more surface space for the vodka to extract her properties. We're just going to put it in a jar. It's just this simple. Now, if you don't have enough to fill up the jar completely with plant matter, that's not the end of the world, but do make sure that you have enough vodka to fill up the jar all the way. That way you're preventing oxidization. Oxidization? I know the word, I just can't say it right. You know what I mean. It's really important with these videos that I don't like worry about like my wording being perfect and that my, you know, environment being perfect and that it's all like productionized, because that just stresses me out and then I don't make them, you know, because like I need to just be like, oh yeah, I need to make these 3 tinctures because I got back from the hills. I don't want to be like, oh no, I have to clean this entire, I have to do this, I have to do this, and oh, I said that wrong, I have to start all over again. I can't do that. I just need to be a human, you know. I know that's hard on social media and stuff like that, to just allow yourself to just be an imperfect human. So look at that, I chopped up just about a perfect amount, which means that I can come back through and do another ½ gallon. Or dry it for tea or smoking blends. So you're just going to take your vodka, and if you can't get 100 proof, 80 proof is fine. But I don't suggest using anything over 100 proof. And I like 100 proof because it is 50% water and 50% alcohol, which means as soon as I decant this, which means I'm going to press the alcohol out of the plant material, as soon as I decant it, I will automatically have a tincture that's ready to take. It will be 50% water, 50% alcohol, meaning I don't have to do any crazy ass math. Like, it's so funny. People use like really high grain alcohol so they don't have to wait a long time, but then they have to do complicated math to get it back down to 100 proof so it's safe to ingest. I'm like, why don't you just use 100 proof in the first place and just be a little bit more patient and wait a few more weeks for your tincture to be ready? But you know, it's instant gratification society, right? And because I forgot to grab a lid, I'm going to reach back here and grab one. So, let me put a lid on there. I almost always forget something when I'm making a video. Grab a canning ring, and you're going to put your lid on. Then you're going to create yourself a label of some sort. I don't care if it's masking tape or you make your own template. Like I make my own on a label designer where it shows all the information, like it shows how many ounces or pounds, what's in it, what date I got it, if it's wildcrafted, store-bought, or a mix, where I got it from, all that kind of stuff. And you got it all filled out, and you're just gonna stick it on your jar. That way you know what it is and how long it's been sitting somewhere. Now if you forget about your tincture and you're like, oh my god, it's been sitting there for like 2 or 3 years, don't worry, it's fine. I have tinctures that are like 10, 15 years old from the first like back into like doing it on my own. Well, I'm doing it on my own now, but you know what I mean. From way back in the day, because I don't need it all the time. And this amount of mullein tincture could last you like generations. If you're not like giving it out to other people and you're just like passing it down through the family. But the cool thing is alcohol-based tinctures never go bad. They just don't. Like this lid will go bad before this does. But you know, it's not, even if it's like down a little bit, it would take a long time for the lid to go bad. So that's all it is. It's just cut up your plant matter, your fresh plant matter, put it in a jar, dump vodka over it, stick a label on it, put a cap on it, put it somewhere cool and dark for 6 to 8 weeks, strain it out, and take the doses needed. So that's how you make a mullein tincture. So I hope that cleared some stuff up for you, and I'll see you next time, okay?